let's move to the first part of the event and the session, which is just a quick run through of all the basics. And to run you through all of this, I'm going to introduce Nisreen Mamaji. Nisreen. Nisreen is very patient, very kind, very understanding, more important to us than all her amazing accolades, because she is a certified financial planner, she's an award-winning one, she's the CEO of her own financial advisory firm, and I won't take up much of your time, but I'll just hand it over to Nisreen. Sorry. We also have Facebook live streaming this entire event on Malini's Girl Tribe, the Facebook group. So if there are any of your friends who haven't been able to make it to this event but still want to kind of be a part of the conversation, please do encourage them to join Malini's Girl Tribe on Facebook and then watch the live stream there.
See a lot of interesting faces over here, interested in what is money all about, what is finances. And it's typically a very boring topic, I know, but when you want to buy something, or when you want to give something, or when you inherit money, that's when you really, figure out that, listen, what am I supposed to do with this? And so let's get on with it. And we try to do a very short kind of a workshop on what this is all about, and I have a very interesting panel which we will introduce later. So I think that kind of will wrap it up for you. So this next slide. So typically in the getting started part of it, why are we investing? I'll take you to a little hierarchy of needs where money is concerned. And the first part of it is emergency planning or risk planning. Now, emergency planning is normally what you would be looking at if you suddenly lose a job. Okay, this just happened to one of my clients just last week. He was in National Head HR for 20 years and suddenly found himself out of a job. He told me, listen, because we've done the emergency planning part, I don't have to worry about my EMIs and I don't have to stop my systematic investment plans. So that's because the planning has been done. Now, typically, emergency planning is 6 months of expenses and savings. So that if you want to switch your career, you want to take a sabbatical because you've, just felt like, you want to travel for a year, or you've had a baby, there are various reasons why we stop working, and the loss of income shouldn't bother your lifestyle. So that's the reason that we do have something called emergency funds. And the way to invest it is in something called liquid funds, which is a step away from your savings bank account. Now, all of us know that on our savings bank account, you earn about 3.5% interest, maximum 4%. So on a liquid fund, what you could look forward to is about 7% annualized. So that in case you aren't, you're away, you don't have a job for that long, it's very easy to redeem. We have a feature called Insta Redemption, whereby up to 50,000 rupees, while you're standing at a checkout counter, you can just tap into your app or send a message or send an email, and the money will hit your account up to 50,000 rupees. If it's more than that, the next day. So it's just kind of, deciding and having a little bit of discipline in how we manage our money, which will make a difference of up to 2.5% annually into your savings account, okay? So there's a difference between a liquid fund and savings account, and we'll have more about it later, because one of our panelists, in fact, has a very lovely app to deal with this, and we'll discuss it later. So also we asked earlier, I think Natasha asked you about insurance. So this is not just car insurance. The emergency planning and the second part of the protection phase is also taking care of your health or disability or a life cover. Because as we all know, you could be walking on the roads and suddenly, drop down due to a heart attack, or maybe not reach home, and that can happen to anybody and any of our loved ones. So an important thing for life insurance is if you have a dependent. So if there is a family dependent on you, then you go in for a life cover. If you don't have a spouse or children dependent on your income, then you could consider delaying that, but a health insurance is a must. Especially since we live in Bombay, the cost of health insurance has, the inflation of health insurance is really high. And if any of us has visited a hospital or gone to see somebody and just casually asked, how much did this cost you? You'll realize that it's really very expensive, even if you just go for a small appendix. And if something bigger hits you, then you'll just be out of money, or you'll have to borrow from your parents, from your friends, or your other plans all go for a toss. So it's best to take a really good health cover for yourself, which won't cost you too much. We also have something called a top-up cover. Yeah, can we do the... Right. So, what I'm going to request you all to do is just make a note of the questions and we'll do it in the Q&A part. But interesting question, what you should be doing is, having a small base cover of your own, even if your company is, because what happens is if you become uninsurable, like if you get BP or diabetes, then you won't get insured. And you also don't know when that's going to happen. A lot of young people also get diabetes. So just take a small cover for yourself, because at least you'll be able to, enhance that later. And the cost-effective way to do it is have a base cover and a top-up plan. Okay, your top-up plan costs you less. So this is something that you may not be able to just get off Google. It's a good tip. Take a top-up plan for about 3 to 5 lakhs. And take a base plan for about 3 to 5 lakhs if you're living in Bombay. If you're slightly older, then you go in for a good top-up of about 15 to 20 lakhs. Because any disease that hits you can turn out to be, very expensive. And you don't want to budget on your medical care. You may not want to say, I can't go to this hospital or I can't afford this doctor. So it's not going to cost you too much for a top-up plan, and that's a really good way of going about it. So, and the second part of it is your, accumulation phase. Now, typically, our accumulation phase starts from our first paycheck until we retire. So you have about, say, 30 or 35 odd years to create the wealth that you always aspired for. Here, what you should be doing is actually making a goal plan. This is what I want to do and when. I want to buy a house. I want to buy a second house. I want to buy a pair of earrings. I want to gift my parents something on their 30th anniversary. I want to buy I want to invest for my own education. I want to invest for my child's education. I want to invest for my child's marriage. I want to invest for my honeymoon. I want a destination wedding. It could be anything, but you kind of know when you want this. And I want to retire, because all of us are going to hit that magical age of 55 or 60, or you might just want an earlier retirement. You may not want to complete your so-called, life in your total working phase. You might want to start your own business. So there are a lot of these things which are in your head. You're kind of mulling it over, but you really don't know how to go about it. So the very simple thing would be just take a pen to paper, write down all the possible goals that you have, because all these goals have a financial connotation. Everything has to do with money eventually. So write down the goal, write down the time, and also write down the present cost of all these things. Okay, suppose you want to buy a pair of earrings. You walked into one of these nice jewelry shops. What is the cost today? If you can afford it, great. If you can't, then remember next year it's going to get a little more expensive, because there's something called inflation eating into our pockets. Okay, so there's this inflation, which is averagely, a 10-year average could be 5 to 6%. So next year, whether it's a college education, whether it's a pair of shoes, whether it's a pair of earrings, whether it's a house, it's going to cost you little more and a little more and a little more. So obviously, you have to earn that much more to keep pace. Otherwise, you'll be running on the treadmill and you'll be right there. You won't have gone ahead, right? So that's the reason the liquid fund comes in a lot more handy, because if your savings bank account is giving you about 3.5%, your fixed deposit is giving you 6.5%, then you're not going to keep in touch with inflation, because your inflation itself is about 5 to 6%. So in order to earn a little more real return, like we say, you have to earn more than that base price, the base rate of about 6.5%. So just, when you're comparing rates, compare the real rates, which is the rate minus inflation. Otherwise, you won't be able to figure out whether it's going to be, beneficial for you or not. So remember always to take inflation into account. One of the other things I could be talking about here is also the power of compounding. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we will look at in the accumulation phase. One, as I said, is inflation. The second thing is when you keep on investing again and again and again. For example, if you've taken a monthly investment plan, which in terminology, financial terminology, is called a systematic investment plan. So on your first installment, you'll earn an X amount. On your second installment, you'll earn what you earn on the first plus the second. So if you take a regular calculator, we use financial calculator, which makes it very simple. On a regular calculator, put 1,000 into 1.01 into 1.01 into 1.01. The 01 is, say, 10% annualized earning. And you'll figure out how fast it grows. So just do it about 10 times or 15 times whenever you're free, and suddenly you will be shocked with the number. So it's actually called the eighth wonder of the world, which is power of compounding. And most of us don't realize its value, because you don't feel that it's much, I mean, you're investing, you could invest 5,000 or 10,000 rupees without figuring out it has a lot of value. But when you see the corpus about 5 years later, 60 installments later, you yourself will be very happy with the progress, depending on, of course, if you've invested right. Okay, because that's another ballgame altogether. So that would be your financial planning, and of course your retirement planning, where you have a really long way to go. So before you do anything else, before you buy your earrings or anything, just put away a very, very nominal amount for your retirement plan and stick to that and try to increase that figure actually every year by 10%. Okay? This is just very ballpark, but if you do that, you will find that it really works magically and it's very affordable. The idea is for it to be sustained by you. It's very much like a diet plan. You start off, I'm not going to eat carbs, I'm going to go on a keto diet, etc., etc. But you can't sustain it for more than 2 or 3 months. And the minute you stop, you've put on all that weight. Okay, so I'm sure all of us have tried it. I see a lot of people laughing. It's happened with me as well. So, so it has to be sustainable. So I always tell somebody that if you can afford 10,000, don't put 10,000 in an SIP. Start with 7, and leave that 2,000-3,000 for your money that you would like to keep aside for yourself. And you just extrapolate it into the into the amount that you think is right for you. Multiply it by 5, multiply it by 10, multiply it by 100. But keep a little safety margin, because you might just want to use that money every month for something else. So don't stretch yourself. Be very comfortable with the figure that you can manage, but put it away first. So that means what you do is you save, you pay yourself first. So put into your savings plan the minute you get your account. We have a couple of rules over here. I'll just share 2 with you. One is called a 50-30-20 rule. 50% is expenses which are fixed. It could be your, if you're living in a paying guest accommodation, if it could be your rent, it could be your electricity, it could be your internet and mobile, it could be your transportation and food. So this is fixed. It doesn't change every month. 30% is what you could be saving for later, which is your retirement, your investments, your savings, your big asset purchase. And 20% is typically your wants, not your needs. You want to go on a holiday, you have some recreation, shopping to do, you want to go to a mall, you like online shopping. So obviously, if you are spending all these hours working, and you want some monies for yourself to enjoy with, right? You can't put away everything. So keep that aside. So that's a 50-30-20 rule. A variation of that is an 80-20 rule. So 80% is for all your fixed and variable expenses. The proportion is up to you, and 20% you save. I mean, irrespective. So also what a lot of people do, I'll just share some best practices, is that if your account is going to get credited by the 1st of every month, all your investments and savings should be out of your account by the 5th or 7th. So you don't have that money. Okay? That's a simple way to do it. So once it's gone, it's gone. You don't have to bother with it. Also, a lot of banks will give you like something which is a side account. I know ICICI Bank has something called Pockets. Okay, it has a separate account number and a separate debit card. So what you can also do is, if you are earning a fairly good income every month, and you don't know what to do with it because it just keeps piling up, and suddenly when you see it's gone into lakhs and you've done nothing out of fear because you don't want to make the wrong choice. So what you can do is move the money that you're spending every month, which is your fixed expenses, to this Pockets. I know HDFC and all also have some version of this e-wallet, which is, it's basically called e-wallet. Move that money there, so you know that you're not going to spend more than what you've transferred into the e-wallet. And the main bank account, keep for your investments. and start investing early, because the power of compounding can really work very well for you. Don't delay, because it just piles up. Before you know it, you'll have, a couple of lakhs, and it's just lying there at 3.5%. Remember that. Let that thought worry you. Let the thought of the money not working for you actually bother you, okay? Because it's not just you. 10, 15 years later, you want the money to be alongside you and having made as much money or more. So you have to be a very good money manager. We work very hard at what we do, We spend hours, you give up so many things. You are very disciplined in the work that you do. But we are not disciplined when it comes to managing our money. And you just let it lie. You're fearful, you're lethargic. So let that not happen to you. Be an empowered investor. Be an investor with knowledge and information, so that, you can make your own choices. You don't have to take risky choices if you're scared. If you're scared of volatility, it's fine. Don't go in for equities, or go in for equities which are only 10 to 15% of your portfolio. But at least a balanced 85% can be in fixed income, earning you more than a regular banking product, which everybody normally does, okay? So at least get to know. There's lots of information available online. There are a lot of comparisons, analysis, and hopefully our today's informed panel will help you to take away some of that fear and lethargy. And the last part is the distribution phase, where you've already retired, and now your corpus is going to work for you. At that stage, whatever you've developed into your retirement corpus, whatever you've given away to your children, because there's some amount of estate planning that all of us would like to do as well. So if you want to set aside some money to your children, to your beneficiaries, to your dependents, to your nominees, there might be people going ahead who are dependent on you. So give that all away, decide that in the estate planning part of it, and whatever is left should be able to give you back an income that is equal to your lifestyle earlier. So you don't want to compromise on your lifestyle after you've retired, obviously. You want that to be as good as when you had the money in your hand, right? You want to feel that respect and that dignity when you are retired as well. But unless you start from now, you're not going to have that. And we can't depend on our parents and our family forever, or your inheritance. So if you're expecting an inheritance, fabulous, but you have to know how to manage it, right? So of course, all of us expect that, our parents are going to give us something. And it happens. I recently lost my dad, and so I got some money as well. But fortunately, I'd planned for it before the eventuality, because, I was in the field. But all of us will expect money from our parents, right? You do get inheritance, but you have to learn how to manage it, because it suddenly comes to you, and then you don't know, and you make wrong choices. So if you read about it, I can just give you a very small example. So, I've already mentioned as to why we should invest, because of inflation. Milk pricing has really gone up over the years, and so has children's education. What cost us 4,000 rupees earlier, or 5,000 a year, is now costing 100,000 in even a simple ICSE, CBSE, SSE syllabus. So, yeah, ICSE, SSE, so if you're going in for international education, for your children, for your nephews, for your nieces, for the children in your family, it will be much more. Next slide, please. All right. So investing versus taking a loan. So we have a few ground rules here also. So we go on to borrow only if you have 20% of the loan amount already as a down payment. Your EMI shouldn't be more than 35% of your monthly salary. Also, don't borrow, follow in the debt trap. You just keep on taking a personal loan, and all of us get enough calls regarding that. But remember that if you miss that payment, the interest that you pay per month would be 3.5% compounded. Okay, it's like on your credit card bill. We were just talking about it earlier. Don't pay the minimum amount due. Pay the entire credit. If you pay the minimum amount due, then it just gets compounded, and suddenly you will be faced with this huge bill, and you don't have any idea what to do with it. And you had the money lying in your bank account all the time. So you use it very judiciously. Use a loan, of course. There are bankers, there are loans, and you have to use them, but decide when, okay? And also make sure that your credit card, credit scoring is high. So recently I did my CIBIL scoring. It's CIBIL. Just get onto it, and they have a whole list of things that you have to put in to get your the score. A 700 score out of 900 is good. And when you have every credit card gives you an a credit limit. So use about 30% of that to begin with. Don't max your limits, even if you have several cards, because that's how you build your reputation with the credit card companies and with CIBIL. So those are a general, rule of thumb kind of thing. So use up to 30%. Don't max that out, and just follow some of the words in green over here, the highlighted ones. And of course, repay your loans on time. Okay, because that you have to build a good credit history. So make sure that whatever you've taken a personal loan or your credit card swiping is always paid back. So this part is all about, everyone's confused about where should we invest. So this gives you a little bit of an idea about what are my investment choices to begin with. So your first one is, of course, cash. That could be your liquid funds, your savings bank account, your digi wallets, and your hard cash that you keep in your wallets. And that's the reason that you keep it as liquidity. So if you know how much you need per month for your liquidity, don't go beyond that. Keep that much only in either of these options, which is your cash options. Everything else should be invested. Otherwise, your cash component is just rotting and wasting and not earning that interest that you're capable of earning, okay? The next one is equity. You could be investing in index funds. Index funds are pegged to any particular benchmark index. You have something called exchange traded fund. That is again similar to the, it's traded on any kind of NSE or BSE, and it will be a multitude of stocks in the same proportion that is held by the index. So that's called an exchange traded fund. Then you have equity mutual funds and you have direct equity. So equity mutual funds is for a person who's not sure which stock to buy. And I think most of us will fall in that category, because a regular retail investor always buys when the market is low and sells when the market is, the opposite. And so you always buy on the highest and sell on the lowest, and you kind of will lose your money, because not all of us can track, the net worth of a company, their asset book, their book value, all the ratios. Most of us are not capable of doing that. So an easy thing to do would be to invest into a mutual fund, which, say, a diversified latch card fund, which is an easy way to start, will have about 70 stocks. And the sectors will be about 10 to 15 sectors. So it's not likely that every sector is going to go down, and also that so many stocks will be going down at any particular level of time. So averagely, you can make a decent return that you expect. The two things to avoid are fear and greed. So let's not run after that 25, 35, 45%. If we are happy with our average between our bank rate to, say, a little few basis points above that to beat inflation, I think we'll make it in the longer term. So let's be sure that, all of us can't be punters and speculators and always have that information, okay, this stock is going to go up today, and buy it at that time, and also be wise enough to sell when it's just before it's going to hit rock bottom. I think it's all theoretical. It's not possible for all of us to actually sit in front of a terminal day in and day out and to see this kind of information. It's not available to us at our fingertips. So a mutual fund is a nice basket of instruments which will give you these choices. Also, the choices are between debt, which is fixed income, which is something similar to your banking products, and equity. So you can do a mix of these also, which is called a hybrid mutual fund. If you don't have the risk appetite or you don't want to take any volatility, that's also okay. You don't have to invest in an equity mutual fund. You can as well invest in a debt mutual fund, okay, depending on your tenure, your age. So there are a lot of, risk questionnaires that one will do with you and decide how you're going to be placed. So nothing to get fearful of the number 2 equity also. Then you have fixed income. A lot of these choices we're already familiar with. It could be your, fixed deposits, it could be post office schemes, it could be bonds, and as well as debt mutual funds, which I've already spoken about, okay? So that's the safe category. Remember, there is also volatility in a debt mutual fund. There will be some amount of credit risk there. So do tread carefully, understand what you're doing, and then it's fine to do it. So you just have to kind of wait and be an informed investor rather than, just being in cash and not earning anything. Then of course we have our real estate, where you could, you could be using that property, which we call a self-occupied property, or you could be renting it out. If you have house number 2 or house number 3, that's called a let-out property. There will be some taxation issues when you let out property, but that's fine because you will earn in capital appreciation as well as rental income if you have property. And then of course we have commodities, which could be gold, it could be art, it could be, you know, various choices of that. So typically an investor is supposed to have a little bit of everything. But if you are going to start out, I think you should start with the cash part, which is the liquid fund, and definitely equity and the fixed income part. Because, you know, real estate and commodities will come, you know, they're higher valued. And you may not have the investable surplus when you are a novice investor. So do start, but start maybe at the earlier first three categories. So then again, this is, you know, what we have, what is mandatory. Okay, so if you are earning, you know, a certain amount, say over 4.5 lakhs a year, 1.5 lakhs at least should be invested into any of these products. So you can use any of these choices, you can use 2, 3, 4, and you know, complete your ATC. So this is mandatory. You have to save that. If you invest that, then you don't have to pay your tax. So you can decide whether you would rather just pay the tax or go in for an investment, which is like a deferred, you know, money. It's your money coming back to you later. Some of these will be, you know, invested for 15 years, like PPF. So it's a longer term investment. If you like it very much, you can even extend that time frame. They give you an extension. The others, like NSC, NSC will be giving you a 5-year lock-in. Equity linked savings schemes, ELSS, is a mutual fund with an ATC benefit. So that's a 3-year lock-in. So, and it gives you a dividend payout option. So you can decide various choices. I would recommend ELSS because of, the next slide, because of the returns. So these are the current returns. I've just picked out, you know, the 5-year CAGRs. I've taken the 5-year rates of return, and I've just taken the top 5. So there's no bias here, and there's a few of the funds, and you can see the returns over 5 years, every year for 5 years. And also we've compared, you know, in the earlier part, the various other products and the returns, the taxability, and the risk. So definitely ELSS would be in the higher risk category, but this is like crossing the road and looking left and right, right? I mean, you cross the road, it's not that you're just walking blindly. So take an informed choice, know that there will be volatility, but there's no pain, no gain. So if you want that higher return, then you have to jolly well take that higher risk, right? And so you have to be understanding about it. You have to, if the market is down, don't sell, wait until the market corrects. So keep your investable money into this, you know, the extra surpluses. Don't keep your funds that you need for your home, you know, that you need to pay for rent, or you need to pay for your internet and your transportation and your food. That amount of money cannot be put into equities. It's your investable surplus, which you don't want to touch, say, for about 5 years, that you can put in a equity fund. The choice for the ATC is equity linked savings scheme. The next slide, please. So this is kind of an ideal asset allocation for people between 20 to 30 and 30 to 50. It's not the gospel, because obviously each of us will be in a different situation. But just averagely, I mean, you know, you can follow this principle. Usually a financial plan is customized to suit you exactly, keeping your risk profile in mind, your demographics, your family, your needs and your requirements. But just in general, if you just want to, you know, make a note of this, you can do that. It's just a path. I mean, you don't have to follow this exactly. So there's real estate, cash, bonds and stock in each of these categories. Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is, you know, the SIPs that I was talking about earlier. If the SIP remains constant, this is how you will be growing if you start at 25 and you end at 40. So in the 15 years, this is what your you know, SIP can grow to. So it's very important to you know, understand the power of compounding and how much your money will keep on growing. So the monthly SIP outgo is easy when you are young, but not as easy because the real return which I took, the purchasing power. Okay, so the purchasing power of the money when you're 25 and when you're 40, that's the difference. Systematic investment plan. So that's why I said when you start, you know, on say an X amount of figure that you want to put in every month, try to increase that figure every year by 10% just to keep up with the inflation. So when you start with SIP, say about 20, 30 years back, you might start with say 5,000 or 10,000. And then you say, TK, I'm investing, and you're very happy. Yes, I'm an SIP investor, I'm an equity investor, my money will make money. But you forget to actually increase that amount every year. Because, you know, your purchasing power is going down every year. Like we showed you earlier, milk has gone up, you know, from in a 2-year decade, in 20 years, your fees have gone up. So every year this will continue to eat into your corpus. So also make sure that your SIP figure is increased annually. Of course, if you're having issues and some problems with your keeping up with your expenses, the plan has to eventually follow you. Okay, I mean it has to be a very sustainable, manageable plan. But I'm just giving you a few rules of the book which you can try to follow and keep it at the back of your mind. But don't get stressed about it and say I have to do this and you're going to skip a meal and all. Don't do all that, which I'm sure none of you are going to do. But just a word of caution. So are we out of? I just mentioned that a little earlier.
Maybe we can just talk a little bit exactly how SIP
Okay,
works,
sure.
because this is very important.
This is an important one. Okay, so a systematic investment plan is a figure that you put into a fund and an investment plan every month. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the power of compounding, it's an investment plan which is systematic. So you put that amount, whether you're putting 5,000, whether you're putting 10,000, whether you're putting 25,000, you have to stick with the figure and the dates. So suppose you're investing, say 25,000, and you've selected 5 mutual funds, and you've decided that between the 1st and the 10th of every month, my account will get debited. So between the 1st and the 10th, every day maybe 5,000 will get debited into these 5 magical funds. You track their performance. If it's an equity fund, at least once in 3 years. You can't keep on jumping the gun and saying this is not a good fund or this is a bad fund, because that 1 year in equities may not be good. For example, 2018 was a good year, but starting November, and this year is going to continue to be choppy, obviously because we have a lot of local developments going on this year. We have our elections coming up. There will be the oil prices. There's something happening in the US, there's Trump elections. There was a China issue. So all these global factors will play up on our net asset price or net asset value, which is a price of each unit of that SIP that you've invested in. So when you're investing, say that 25,000 and you have these 5 funds, each of these funds will have a rate at which it is quoted at 5 p.m. every day, which is called the net asset value. NAV, the NAV. It's like the share price, yeah. You can, as I mentioned earlier, you can have a range of products that you want to invest in. So if you're investing in a mutual fund, then it will be priced at that net asset value, which is either a debt fund or an equity fund. But you can select your asset allocation based on all the investable choices that we showed you earlier. It's completely your choice, and you can have a customized plan made for you. So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So when it opens, it's normally 10 rupees. I'm sorry?
So they say whichever is lower.
Whichever is lower when you're buying?
Yeah, NAV and the price at which the equity opens, the base value of what we call, that it should never go below the base value. So does any equity go below the value it opens as a new fund?
Yes, it can. See, when a new fund opens, it normally opens at say 10 rupees. But if you have seen depreciation in that particular fund, then the next year it could be 8.5, it could be 7, it can go down to 1, it can go down to 0 also, depending on the components of that fund. So yes, that is a volatile part of it, and that NAV goes up and down. So in an equity fund, you will have to have the capacity to hold through that investment. That's why I mentioned earlier, invest in an equity fund if you have the investable surplus to hold on for a particular period of time. And you don't need that money on 1st July 2020. So sometimes what happens is that you need the funds on a particular date. Then you can't obviously invest in an equity fund or a hybrid fund, which will have some amount of volatility in it. So you have to select a fund which will, like for example, if you want the money 6 months down the line, you should be investing in a low duration fund or an ultra short fund. Okay, in that we do a kind of mark to market, and you may not see the volatility that you can in an equity fund. Recently, you must have read in the newspapers that there has been a lot of talk about SL and Z and DHFL, etc. So some of these, even certain fixed maturity plans haven't been able to return money to their investors. So do understand that when you're investing in a mutual fund, there is some amount of risk, but you have to take an informed risk. Okay? So what you have to do is, rather than taking your money today, you might have to wait for it to, for the company to give you back your money. So it's not going to be like a vanilla bank, savings manageable, but you would have to understand what you want to do and be very clear with your financial advisor or your planner and set that plan in action. So yes, I mean I would like, I think we have a slide which says how do I buy a mutual fund. So I'll maybe go on to that. So these are the two options that you have, for buying. How do I invest? So there's something called direct, which you can invest through the mutual fund website. You can go to the registrar. So we have CAMS and Carvey and Franklin Templeton and Sundaram. There are 4 or 5 registrars. So even they can, help you to invest in the fund. Or you can do something called a robo-advisor. So we have certain apps, for example, which will be giving, they have a ready-made kind of a solution. So if you tell them your age, a little bit about your risk profile, a little bit about the investable surplus, they will pop the answer back and you could try that as well. So there are a couple in the market. If you prefer to a face-to-face, like a brick and mortar kind of a person, and you want to face to that advisor and you want hand-holding, then of course we have the regular route, which is a bank, a financial advisor, a robo-advisor again will be available in the regular route, or a registered broker, okay? So these are the options that you can have. I would fall in the financial advisor section. So I myself would be an independent financial advisor and a certified financial planner who would be able to, draw out this basket of instruments for someone like you and take you through the process. In which case you don't have to worry, or if you're scared and you don't want to go through not knowing what's happening, you can have a physical person and a physical site to deal with it. They could. So that has to be answered on a personal, there's a customized solution for that.
Maybe we can just hold off on the questions so that we can address it directly to the panel. And
we'll do that later, yeah? So, okay, so I think next slide. So in the managing effortlessly, like I said, there are various apps. And you have Scriptbox, which is one of the apps which will give you some of the ready-made answers. We have Money Control, we have the Motilal Oswal, and I think we'll be talking a lot more about apps in the panel. Okay, so if any of you want, to know more, please feel free to contact us, and we can work out the customized, answers for you maybe later and in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nisreen. So I know that